Okay, today we are going to be making a very basic pie crust, a pastry kind of thing, and I'm going to be showing you a half recipe. We're going to be using that half recipe today and again on our next lab. So this portion of the video you're going to be seeing more than once. So just to know that we're going to be using this more than once on this particular part. So the first thing that I wanted to show you was the equipment you're going to need for what we're doing today. We are going to be making savory hand pies, and so you need to have some things like, first of all, different rolling pins. You're going to be rolling out some crust in a little bit. I have this one, which is just a flat dowel that works really well. Broom handles, the same thing. There's this one, which is a French one. It's long and skinny. It works quite well. It's made to have some direct pressure. This is called an American one. You'll also notice that I have the pie pan here. You can choose to use the pie pan, or if you have a baking sheet, you can just use a regular baking sheet. That is your choice. You're going to need a bowl. This is a pastry blender inside the bowl here. When you have a pastry blender, you can use this, or if you don't have one, just use a fork sideways. That works just as well. But I wanted you to see what that was. You're going to need a measuring spoon. You're going to need a measuring cup. Now, in addition to that, I have parchment sitting down here because it just makes it easier for cleanup. If you don't want to use the parchment, that's fine. This is actually a piece of parchment that I cut in half, and then I cut in half again. So this is a quarter sheet of parchment that we're going to be using for each of our days. The ingredients you're going to need is I have flour, I have salt, I have shortening, I have cold water, and I also then have my curry that I made the other day that we're going to be putting inside to make a savory pie. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Okay, we're going to get started with our pastry right now. So in my bowl, I am going to measure in 1/2 of a cup of flour. Whenever I'm using flour, I always want to make sure that I have it nice and fluffy. And then when I get my flour, I want to make sure that I level off the top so that I am getting an accurate measurement. So I can use the side of a knife or I can use my finger. And so I'm putting in 1/2 cup of flour. To that 1/2 cup of flour, I am going to be adding about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, when you look at your hand, this little indentation right here in your hand is about a teaspoon. So what I'm going to do is fill that about halfway full of salt, so it's about that much. And I'm going to go ahead and put that into my my flour. So I'm just putting this together. This particular pastry that we're making is called a 3-2-1 crust. It's called a flaky crust. It's called a standard pastry crust. Those are all names for the same thing. And when we are using them, you want to be careful, when you talk about it, because there's also mealy crusts and there's all kinds of different crusts that are out there. We have a lot of different types of pies, and we in America tend to always think of sweet pies, but there are actually lots of savory pies as well. Because I'm going to be measuring shortening, I wrap my tablespoon with the plastic wrap again, and I'm going to put in 3 tablespoons of shortening. So you're going to have to measure out 3 times. So 1, and I'm going to leave my plastic wrap on this time because I'm going to be using it again. I'm going to fill it up a second time. There's 2, and I'm going to put a third one in. Now, sometimes if I have this one, I had stored it in the refrigerator and keeps it nice and cold. Actually, keeping it nice and cold is a good thing because it will keep it so that it will heat up and be just the way, it will cause really nice little flaky crust on it. There are other types of crust that sometimes are crispy or other kind of stuff. We're going for the flaky crust tonight. So if you're using a fork, you can just do exactly what I'm doing with a fork. If you have a pastry blender, you can find these for like $1 at Dollar Tree. At least the last time I was there, they had them. As I said, if you don't have one, just use a fork and just go sideways with it. If these tongs are farther apart than a regular fork, so if I was using a fork, I'm just going to blend this up. And then what I'm going to do is add some water to this. So the flakes come in here are to, this is actually going to be later on, we're going to talk about this as the biscuit method, because with biscuits, I want these pieces of fat to be suspended in my flour so that that way, when it heats up, they will actually cause flakes within the pie and will make it have a really cool kind of, sorry, I just realized that there's, I can't figure out, for whatever reason, I've got a shadow. Anyway, so I'm just going to mix this up, make sure that it comes together and that it looks like it looks almost like cornmeal or like size of peas. I don't want it to be so small because I want to have some chunky pieces of pie in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my water and I'm just going to put a drizzle at a time. Now please notice I have more in my cup than I'm going to use, and that's just so I don't have to keep running back and forth between the sink and my bowl. So I'm just going to keep putting this together until it all comes together into a ball. And I'm just going to, like I said, just going to mix it. I want to add enough water so it comes together, but I don't want to add so much that it doesn't, that it won't, that it's going to cause it to shrink when I make it. So I'm just basically, like I said, pushing my pie dough together, and I can tell by the way it's coming together, it's going to come together really well. And I want it so, like I said, it just is sort of a dry ball that comes together. I don't want to overwork this. I'm not kneading it like later on we'll be kneading bread. I don't want to do that. I want it just so it barely comes together. And then what I'm going to do is, like I said, it comes together into a ball. I don't want it to be sticky. I want it so that it forms and it stays together, but it's not like sticking to my hands and it's not doing anything like that. I just want it so it comes together. Now, I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. This is one of those tricks that is an amazing, amazing trick. As I said, there are certain tricks that I will show you that are ones that have sort of changed my life over the years, and this is one of them. I'm taking a damp cloth and I am wetting down my cutting board or my surface, whatever that is, and then I'm going to be taking some plastic wrap. Now, you don't have to have plastic wrap, you can just put a little bit more flour down, but this works really well in the fact that I'm going to put this down so that it causes it to have, it's going to be like my coating on top of my counter. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my dough and I'm going to press it out so it's about the size of I don't know, a little bit bigger than, bigger than my palm, not quite as big as my hand. And then, oops, I don't know what that is. Whatever that is, I want to get rid of it. And then I'm going to take another piece of plastic wrap, and after I've patted it out, then I'm going to lay this over the top, and then I am going to just roll this out into a nice circle. And we are going to be repeating this process again in the next class so that you will have another chance to do this. And we're going to be doing then another one in the class after that. One of the essential skills of this class is to be able to make a pie crust. I want you to be able to make a standard one. This is the one, it's called standard because this is sort of the basic one that everybody uses. And so you will go ahead and make out your, so it went from being just a little bit bigger than my palm to now it's about as big as my whole hand will go. And then what I'm going to do now is I am going to then take off this top layer, and then this is going to be my my pie crust, my pastry that I'm going to be filling in just a moment. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be taking this pastry crust, and I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to make 2 savory pies out of it. One is going to be each one of these, and I'm going to fold over so that each one will be sort of a little, like I said, a little pie. And you can put anything you want in a pie. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that, but you're going to be putting, I'm going to put some of the curry that we had left the other day. This is some green curry that we made. And I'm just going to put this in the middle of the pie. If you are making a savory pie, it typically will have vegetables, which we have our carrots, our onions, our potatoes in the day. It will have a sauce, which we have our curry sauce. And then the other thing it normally will have is some type of protein. Now, I am not going to be putting protein in mine today because I think it's just fine the way it is. But if you want to put protein, you definitely can put something in. I could put cheese, I could put anything else that I want. I'm going to take a little bit of water around just down the middle and around the side on the edges that I'm going to be folding in half. And then what I'm going to do is take my crust, and I'm just going to fold it over, and then I'm going to seal these edges. I need to seal the edges because I don't want my filling to come out. So again, I'm just pulling up this side, and I'm going to put this over the top here so that I've got my filling all in this area. Now, if I want, I would then transfer it onto my parchment. So I'm just going to pick it up, put it on my parchment, and you can either put it on a baking sheet or you can put it on the pie pan. So let me go ahead and use the pie pan since some of you will be using that. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put these in my pie pan, and then I can go ahead and I can decorate the edges if I want. I can turn them over and just make them look sort of pretty if I want, and then just sort of smush them. This area right here is called crimping or fluting. And I do that just to seal this edge to make sure that this edge is not going to open, and it will have it so I can have my little finger pies like this. And again, I'm going to fold it over, and I'm just going to crimp it. Now, sometimes people like to take and do forks instead. So let me show you that technique, where I'm basically going to just take a fork and press around the edges so that I've just got the fork edge here if I want to help seal up the edges. And I'm just basically sealing it so that my filling will stay on the inside. Once I have them set the way I want, and either on my pie pan or on my baking sheet, whichever, I am then going to take and I'm going to vent the crust. By venting the crust, whenever I have a top crust and a bottom crust, I need to make sure that I have vents so that way the heat from my filling can get out. If I wanted to, I could use egg whites or I could use milk or something to go over the top to give it more of a sheen. I can sprinkle it with some spice, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put a little bit of seasoning salt just so it has a little bit of color on the top. You could put whatever that you think that you would like to. You could just put some pieces of salt. And so I'm going to bake these, and I'll let you see them in just a minute.